Okay, so looking at the layout of Ableton Live first of all. On this left hand side here we have the categories and places. So this is where audio effects, instruments and plugins, third party that is, and other things that we'll get into are stored and found. And also there's places here where you keep sample sounds and your own settings as well. And this is a really cool little folder structure. You can use the arrow keys to navigate. If you press right on something, that opens up the folder, right again, and so on until you get right down to the file that you're looking for. And using the arrow keys is highly recommended in this section for ease of use. Over to the right, we've got the main area here. This is session view. There's also something that you can't see at the moment called arrangement view, and we'll get into that later. In the session view, we have tracks here. There's two by default, an audio track and a MIDI track, and you can add and remove and alter, rename these as you go. Command T adds audio tracks, Command Shift and T adds MIDI tracks, and to the right of this we have return channels. There's two by default, and these return channels are used to send audio from your audio and MIDI tracks to be affected by whatever effects that we put on these return tracks. And we can adjust how much of our sent signal is affected. On to the right we have the master channel, also known as the master bus. This is where all of our sounds get sent to before we export any audio. Down below we have what's called the device area. Now this is where you can drag and drop audio and MIDI devices onto each channel. For example, I have an audio track highlighted here. If I click on audio effects and then double click on chorus, that's going to automatically add in a chorus effect on this channel. There's another small box down here on the bottom left. This is called the info view box. So if we hover the mouse over almost anything on the screen, it'll give us a little description, and that's very useful, not just for beginners, but I have it on permanently. When you're working from a laptop or a small screen, screen real estate is very important, and you can add and remove certain areas of the screen to give yourself more space on whichever aspect you're concentrating on at the time. And that can be done with this arrow top left here to show and hide the category section. Then we have this one all the way down bottom left to show or hide the info view. And then we have this one down bottom right to show or hide the device view. So you can see with all of those taken out of the equation, we have a whole load more space to add multiple tracks. And as soon as our songs get more busy, this is going to be really helpful. There's also quite a few keyboard shortcut keys that I like to use that can make changing all of these viewing options a lot quicker and a lot easier. And there's a whole section on that. So as I said earlier, we're currently in session view, and this is where we can load clips onto these different audio and MIDI tracks here. Clips we'll get onto later. Session view is very helpful for coming up with ideas and jamming. It's a great way to put together a selection of loops that you can play in a variety of sequences to really start to bring ideas of arrangement into mind. And when you're ready to put your song together in more detail, you can change to what's known as arrangement view. And that's done by clicking these three lines top right. And the one below it takes us back to session view. So let's go back to arrangement view here. Now you can see everything else around it remains the same, but this main operating window is different, and it now scrolls in a more traditional digital audio workstation way from left to right as you build your song. But you can see our tracks, audio and MIDI tracks, are exactly the same. They're just now stacked one on top of each other. And we will create our music going from left to right. You can see these small yellow buttons down here. These hide or show are certain sections to give us again more screen space when you need it. So just clicking on them adds and removes certain aspects of those different tracks and channels, just so that we can have more screen space when needed and they're not in use. We'll get to what they are and what they do later on. The last thing to look at in the beginner's course for the layout is this top area. So from left to right, let's have a look at the most used ones for beginners. We've got the main song tempo here. The preset is 120 beats per minute. Clicking on it and then writing in a new BPM, pressing enter changes it straight away. We've got the time signature. We have the metronome. So you'll be clicking this on to make a beeping sound that counts every beat so that when you're recording you can stay in time. Moving over, we have our play, stop and record button. Over still, we have our loop brace on and off, deciding whether you want to loop a section or not. So the ones I've skipped over are going to be used very infrequently and are not vital to start making tracks as a beginner.